Hey, Gut Check Project fans and KBMD Health family, welcome to the Gut Check Project. I'm your host, Eric Rieger, joined by this host with a prodigious mind for innovation. Ken, what's up?
Mind for innovation. I love that intro.
You left out
Thank
prodigious.
you.
I can't believe that.
Prodigious.
Yeah.
If I knew what it meant, I would compliment that.
I don't know that word either.
Means huge or enormous.
I love that.
Yeah, beautiful.
Thank you, Eric, for that intro. Welcome, everybody. Gut Check Project. We are evolving into the new era, Eric. I know that you are fighting this kicking and screaming, but we are going to talk artificial intelligence in the field of gastroenterology.
Okay.
So it's perfect.
We're getting back to normal. All right.
Yeah, exactly. So we have our guest, Ray, here. Ray, welcome to the Gut Check Project.
Thank you, sirs. I appreciate it. Very honored, very excited to be here.
Nice.
So you are representing AnX Robotics, which happens to be located right here.
Right here in your backyard.
In our backyard, Plano, Texas. So since we're going to be talking about AI, I went ahead and took the liberty of getting your bio from ChatGPT. So
this ought to be interesting.
let's see what ChatGPT says. So obviously my prompt was, tell me all about Ray Bengermino at AnX Robotic Corporation. So, from ChatGPT, Ray Bengermino has held various sales and leadership positions across different organizations. Here is a summary of his professional background based on the information gathered. Ray Bengermino is associated with AnX Robotica Corporation as the Senior Director of Sales for the Americas based in Dallas, Texas. He served as the Vice President of Sales at ResTech and was part of the leadership team directing all product sales for ResTech. Additionally, Ray held the position of Vice President of Sales for OUS Americas and Asia at Mediri RF.
Yeah.
Ray graduated from Old Dominion University in Norfolk with a Bachelor of Science degree in Marketing and Business Administration. Ray is a scratch golfer.
No.
Ray is
That's
the
way
owner
too
and founder of On Point Golf, which we will discuss. Ray has won 3 national championships in the Great Brisket Cook-Off despite being a vegan.
No, that's total GPT, Chat GPT.
He was the second runner-up on Dancing with the Stars twice. I don't know.
I love this.
I realize I'm starting to question this whole AI stuff because I know that you were only second runner-up once.
Once.
So I'm sort of doubting the AI off the jump right now.
I think I know where Kamala Harris gets her script that she reads. Just saying.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And off camera, we are joined by his amazing medical device salesperson, Abigail Van Alstein, who will be commentating from the
bleachers.
From the bleachers, yeah. From the I don't know if it was gallery or galley or bleachers.
She's in the audience. Yeah, she's in the audience. She's in our studio audience.
So she's in our studio audience. I love that. Ray, welcome.
Oh, thanks, guys. This is really fun and an honor. It really is. First of all, to meet you as well, Eric, for the first time. I've had a blast these 2 days, and I look forward to our future collaborations in all aspects of our business.
So it seems pretty fortuitous that my good friend Abigail ended up becoming a sales associate for you in my backyard, and you're doing AI and robotics in my space.
Yes.
So tell me.
Elaborate a little bit on that.
A little bit on that.
It's funny that you bring that up because when I was searching for my next superstar, Abby was brought to me by another good friend of mine in the business, Vic Trevino, who also is a recruiter now in the med device world. So he helped find the best candidates. And the first conversation that we had, your name came up. And I said, that name rings a bell, but I don't know. I can't put a finger on where I met this gentleman, this physician. And she had nothing but incredible things to say about you. And of course, held the carrot out there that she would get us in your group first.
If you hire me, you can go on his podcast.
Yeah, pretty much. No, it was a wonderful transition because she was so respectful of your all's relationship over the last 12 years plus, and hold you in the highest esteem. So that means something to me, because relationships in our world are everything. And if you don't have strong relationships, you're never going to be a good salesperson, sales leader, et cetera, et cetera. So it was a very easy decision for me to decide to bring her in, and I'm not regretting it. I haven't regretted it from day one, and I'm expecting big things out of her, putting a little pressure on her here, but she's already killing it. Your experience yesterday, we've been having that all over the country in a very short period of time. So I'm really excited about sharing all that with you here today. If we can get it all in.
Yeah, well, walk us through it. So, I mean, we're talking about this technology that's GI and AI integrated. We're talking about two different technologies, or at least one discipline of healthcare.
Yep.
And another one that is now, I guess, today's day and age, latest.
In the future.
In the
future of
correct.
medical device, medical care, the whole 9 yards.
100%. So how do these two things fit together, first of all?
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. And I was searching for something like this myself. I've been in the medical device sales world for 30 years. And that lovely overview of my history doesn't even go back all 30 years. I've been seeking a startup company or a innovative technology that would just take it to the promised land. Mm-hmm. And I really feel like I've found it here with AnX. Maybe I'll give you a little bit of history of AnX, because it's exciting, really revolutionary in how it was born. So our three co-founders, Joe Zhao, David Duan, and Kevin Ruby, come from completely separate backgrounds. David and Joe were in the optics world. They met in college at University of Central Florida, and I guess there was their third graduate PhD program. These are very smart guys. And then Kevin Ruby founded the company, or helped found the original company that invented the capsule, given imaging.
Okay.
And they didn't know each other. That's the best part of the story. David and Joe were in Silicon Valley at the time, and they were looking for something to get into, and they were in the optics side of things. So they found capsule endoscopy. They found basically GI endoscopy. And they saw that there was a technology that was, basically the only game in town, one company given, and nothing had changed about it in the 25 years that it had been invented.
And for capsule endoscopy, we're talking about a patient swallows or has one implanted, and it takes pictures as it goes all throughout the
the small bowel. Yeah. So just a little background. In order to get a full view of the digestive tract, you either have to do, as he does every day, scoping or a colonoscopy. Mm-hmm. But it can't get all the way through because of the however many feet, you'd know better than I do, of the digestive tract. A small bowel is an area where you can't image, or you couldn't image until the capsule was invented.
Mm-hmm. So which was groundbreaking at the time.
Groundbreaking, yeah. And that's what we're excited about. We think we have the next potential given imaging with what we've entered the market as a groundbreaking AI solution. So they saw the need. They saw something that needed to be improved. And the original idea was to take a magnetic system and steer a capsule, even before the small bowel piece of it came into, or the AI piece of it came into play. And that is also incredible technology, because for the first time you could, from outside the body, steer a capsule inside the body, or a camera, without needing a scope. The problem in the world of medical device and in healthcare, if insurance doesn't pay for something, you could have the cure for cancer and it won't get adopted very quickly. But they forged on. This is back in 2008. They started this company. For their, the real neat union, if you will, that came together was Given Imaging was sold to Covidien, which was a big medical device company at the time that was later bought by Medtronic, and Kevin Ruby was basically, retired because he was the chief operating officer of Given. So they got together. David and Joe, reached out to Kevin, and they put together this new company, and it was Ancon at the time. The hard part of the story is in 2008, as you guys will probably remember, the market crashed in the housing market. So funding dried up. So they were in Silicon Valley thinking everybody was going to invest in this technology, but nobody was investing in any new medical device technology at the time. So they took it to their homeland. Joe and David are both Chinese Americans, but they've been in the U.S. for 30 years. So they just went back, friends and family money, and then got involved with SoftBank of China, which is one of the largest private equity companies in the world, and convinced them to put some money in, and our company was born. The best part about it is Kevin and his knowledge of given imaging had all the tools to put together the next potential given imaging. And he was outside of his non-compete at that point, and the patents that given imaging had on capsule and all technology related were expiring. So we had a window that we could launch this company. And that's how AnX and Ancon and AnX are sister companies. AnX is our U.S.-based company, and Ancon is our Chinese-based company.
Okay.
So the capsule technology existed, and I've been doing capsules since they were actually launched. But the timeline of this, when did the AI, when did you guys start, or when did those guys start realizing that AI had a potential to be integrated with this?
It was early on. It was very early on. But what it takes, as you know very well from your world of clinical study, componentry to med device, you have to study. You have to create clinical evidence that things work. So they were launching the technology in China, mainly, Doc, because gastric cancer is a huge problem in Asia. So the magnetic portion of it was a huge hit there because there wasn't enough gastroenterologists, not enough scoping facilities, and however many billion people in China, and a lot of them developing gastric cancer. So our magnetic system took off. We have over 1,000 units in China right now alone operating every day, buying and selling and using capsules. Mm-hmm. So that was creating a bank, if you will, of images of patients, and that became what was utilized to train the AI.
Oh, okay.
So it just took a while for that to develop because you need more than an N of one patient. You need lots of patients.
Sure.
So we ended up putting together a clinical study that was comprised of close to 5,000 plus patients, 13 or 12 or 13 facilities in China, and then over 113 million images helped us teach the software to save him time and money, when he looks at a study.
And we're going to stop this particular podcast for a special invitation.
This invitation is to join the Gut Check Project Raw Locals community.
We all are tired of the bullshit where we turn for great information, who we can trust, and essentially we want to put a stop to that.
There's a lot of bullshit out there, and I know about that because I'm a butt doctor. We're here to build this community to bring trust back to you. There is a lot of shit out there. There's a lot of stuff being censored, and it stops here with our community.
And I'm a gas passer, which means I put this guy's patients to sleep. I know that you don't want to be filled up with any hot air.
Ultimately, we want you to connect with us. Ask us questions. Let's build a community around trust. No more bullshit.
So if you're watching or listening on Rumble, click that red join button in the bottom right over here, and that will take you directly to GCP Raw.
We're super excited for you to join. I mean, seriously, it's going to be pretty cool.
It is going to be, dude, it is going to be cool, but it's hot as hell in here right now.
Are we done? Should we just walk off?
That's Paul. That's it.
Yeah, so basically what we're talking about here, if you're listening, you won't see this, but what I'm going to be holding up here is what is that, about 3/4 of an inch?
Yeah,
3/4 of an inch?
I think it's 17 millimeters, maybe at best.
Size of a large fish oil tablet. Think of it like a fish oil
length
tablet.
of your last thumb digit.
Yeah.
Yep, that's good.
So what this has is incredible technology. Now, when this came out, when Given came out with their capsule technology, it seemed like science fiction at the time. The problem is, as a physician, so to all the gastroenterologists that watch this, you understand that when you have a patient swallow this, what they do is they walk around and then it just films for 8 to 12 hours. Then that video is uploaded over a series of quite a while. I mean, it's I think at least hour, 2 hours.
Oh, the upload time. Yeah. Well, that's a very, very good point. That hadn't changed in 26 years.
Yeah.
It takes a couple hours to upload
30-some
30,000 images.
And then the doctor sits in front of a camera when he's usually after work, after
Tired.
scoping all day, tired, and you watch what could potentially be 8 hours worth of film. There are ways to speed it up. So at the best, it could be a 2.5, 3 hour read. If it's a really fast transit time, you're excited when it's only an hour and a half.
Right.
Where you're reading everything and you're hoping that you're seeing all these images and a little blip comes up. So a lot of my patients always ask, I want that capsule. And I'm like, the capsule is specifically really for the small bowel. And we'll segue later into how the capsule could be for the stomach, the way that it's being used in China. But what the AI technology allows it to do by using those images that were gathered, it allows it to know what is a benign lesion, meaning ignore that or pay attention to this, and it's able to find patterns. And when you came and talked to me about this, that's how we were taught to read these capsules. I put mine on a 4-square deal, and you just sort of stare, and anything that is slightly different, you stop.
Yeah.
And you go back and forth and go, what is that? And then you stare, and essentially the brain becomes the AI of what's different.
Yeah,
absolutely. That's all it is. And so
perfect analogy.
That's how we're taught. The thing I love about it is the ability to distinguish. And when you have that number of images, when we say AI, I want to kind of get into that a little bit, because this is groundbreaking for gastroenterologists, because what this allows us to do is a whole lot more of these in a time-efficient manner, and we can gather a lot more data. And the more that we do, obviously, the more data that we have. We talk about AI, but with AI, the AI needs to be trained, and this is called machine learning.
Yep.
Now, when you have a lot of that machine learning, this is talking about machine learning. It's a method of supervised learning using training algorithms that enables machines or software to learn how to make decisions using the data to make accurate predictions. So comparing it to the human version of it. And then when you have a lot of that, then you can take it to the more complex form of machine learning into deep learning.
Correct.
And according to your website, because of the data that you have, now we've gone from the simple AI machine learning to deep learning because of this data. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, exactly. So we call it convolutional neural network training. That's a fancy word for everything you just said in terms of how it's specialized in identifying. So it's not a continuously learning AI, so that's important to understand, meaning it's not always adapting, which I think is good, because once it's trained to identify the normal pathology and the abnormal pathology in the small bowel, there's really no reason for it to continue to learn unless something new becomes a pathology that we're not aware of in the small bowel.
I just want to pause on that for one quick second, because Eric and I have actually talked about this, that these continuous learning AIs like ChatGPT, Claude, those can be manipulated.
Yeah.
Because as it learns, if the wrong information is given to it, it will then perceive that as the right move to make. You don't want medical software to be continuously learning.
Exactly.
Because that could go down a rabbit hole, and then you're in a wrong space.
Yeah. And you don't want it to be the doctor. You don't want it to diagnose. You want it to assist you and make you more accurate. And your analogy of you sitting and looking at 4 squares and focusing your attention on that screen and not moving your attention, that's almost impossible for a human being to do. I mean, all 3 of us have sat here at some point and gone with our glass of water, taking a sip, and guess what you just did? You just took your eye off of the screen. So if you had not hit that pause button, you could have potentially missed something. The AI or the software that's trained that we have, it doesn't sleep. It doesn't need to take its eye off of anything. It's never distracted. So it's your backup. It's your security blanket. It's your insurance policy. That as long as you are seeing what is important to see, you're going to be more accurate. And let's face it, the world of GI is a busy place. You guys sometimes work 12-hour days, right? But what's most important to you? Number 1, patient care. You want to make sure that you're doing the best job you can at diagnosing what your patient has so that they can get better. Number 2, saving time, because those 12 hours can go by quickly, and you don't have 24 hours. You don't have 25 hours in a day. You can only do so much. So if any technology can help you save time, that's huge to a gastroenterologist. And then let's face it, we're all in the business to make money and to maximize our profitability. So if you can save time and be doing something, as productive or equally productive or more productive, meaning more scoping, more patients to see in a day, more office organization, financial, management, whatever the case is, our technology brings that to the table for you. Because to your point, you had to sit and not waste, but you had to sit and spend many hours reviewing this. And let's face it, why would you want to sit and look at 30,000 images? Because that's all you could do up until now. And 90% of those images are normal or duplicates, because something about the technology. You were holding up the camera. All capsule companies that are in the space today have pretty much the same type of technology. There's a few variations, a few very good technologies that are somewhat different, but all of them are just snapping pictures, anywhere from 6 frames to 12 frames per second. So imagine the capsule just kind of slowly trekking its way through the small bowel, and you're just getting the same picture in each millimeter that it's going. So our technology was trained to not eliminate it, but just remove it from the need for you to view. And that's the power of AI.
Well, I think it's interesting because a gastroenterologist is actually judged when we're doing colonoscopies by what is known as our adenoma detection rate. So all of us have an adenoma detection rate. How many precancerous polyps do I find? What is the standard? Are you above? Are you below the standard? And because of that, at our center, I take great pride that all our doctors at our center are way above the national average. And that adenoma detection rate is not just the doctor controlling the scope. It's the CRNA who's looking at the screen. It's the tech who's looking at the screen. And
everybody's working as a team.
Everybody's working as a team, and their eyes. And they're like, stop, what's that? Stop, what's that? Everything about this AI, to me, is my team going, stop, look, just look again. It might be nothing, but just look.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that is what's really interesting and fascinating to me.
Yeah. Well, our mission is obviously not to replace your skill set and your specialty. It's to make you as efficient as we can and to help you be more accurate. But at the end of the day, you're the one that knows what you're looking at. You're the one that knows, if it's something that needs to be intervened or, therapeutically dealt with. And that's the beauty of this. We're not trying to take money away from anybody. We're not trying to take specialty away from. We're just an enhanced technology that hasn't been available up until now. And obviously it's better for the patient because their outcome, and God forbid, we're in a litigic world, if that's the right word. If you miss something, you're the one that's going to be on the carpet being called to it. So this helps you, improve that or decrease that potential that you miss something and then it goes on to be cancerous and, somebody sadly passes away.
The whole point of a GI exam is to either stop disease, discover disease, or at least find out that you're healthy. So it only makes sense that if this improves, what I'm hearing is this is an immense improvement in acuity. And just like you said, it doesn't replace Ken, for instance, looking at the gut mucosa at any point. But what it does do is make certain that if anything should be recognized and at least evaluated, it's going to enhance that ability to bring it to the physician's frame of mind so they can then do what they should do.
Yeah.
And that's fully evaluated.
Yep, absolutely.
Because whenever you're doing the scope, Ken, the entire time, the whole journey through, even when we're doing a live colonoscopy, even though it's still the best way to do it instead of, like we've talked about, some other, shitting in a box or any of the other.
We did a whole episode on Cologuard.
Yeah.
And every time we just all we do is do pros and cons on things. We did Ozempic, we did Cologuard, and we just keep getting shadow banned because you can't say anything.
Yeah.
So
Oh, yeah, and you don't have to dig through your poop. Thank you for the audience for letting us know about that. We don't have to dig through poop to do colonoscopies. But, well, you do, but we don't do it.
What the Bleacher fan is saying over here, our studio audience, is that there is another company that you have to retrieve the capsule and through after you do it.
Yeah, I'm going to stop making comments on stuff I don't know about.
Yeah, but it's totally true. A couple things I want to touch on right now. So if somebody's listening to this, they're like, well, do I need a capsule? So the reasons why, as a gastroenterologist, we would order a small bowel capsule exam would be unexplained anemia. So if you are bleeding for any reason, sometimes it could be that you're bleeding massively and we can't find it. Somebody gets admitted to the hospital, and you've got friends that have gone through this where you start chasing, where's this bleeder? And so a bleeding, something that is possibly bleeding, anemia. Anybody with celiac disease, we consider doing this because you're at risk for other lesions like lymphoma and things like that. People with small bowel disease like Crohn's is another one. Sometimes when you have unexplained pain, unexplained weight loss, these are all reasons that your doctor may want to look in your small bowel and see. And the more we do, the more we find reasons, because we're like, oh, wait a minute, celiac isn't necessarily just in the first part of the duodenum. We're seeing it in the jejunum now, or things like that. Or, oh my gosh, that nonspecific abdominal pain that you've been put on an antidepressant because you've been called irritable bowel is actually a Crohn's stricture way down in your jejunum, or possibly in the proximal ileum where the colonoscope doesn't reach. So there's reasons. And I'm going to say this politely, if it would be easier to do it through insurance and easier on the physician side, I think we would do a whole lot more.
Yeah, no question.
And so
that's a great point. Yeah, and the whole clinical necessity aspect of medical or the medical world, insurance wise especially, is the hardest part, because we would love to do more if insurance would just pay for it. So you're spot on. You have to have the most lock solid, justifiable reason to do this. And if you really do, or they'll deny the claim. And you've had that happen probably a number of times. And
it's happening. I want to say it's the worst it has ever been. And once one insurance company says, well, we're going to put up a roadblock and a hurdle. We just want to see how serious you are about trying to get this particular procedure done. The more hurdles get put up, and then the other insurance companies do this, and then it just becomes this jumping through hoops thing that you're like, well, I guess it doesn't meet those criteria, but I really want to know. I mean, this patient has a family history of Crohn's disease. They're acting like it. Everything I've gotten doesn't look like it. Doing a capsule endoscopy where I can see some small ulcers would make a huge difference. And we can get in front of the disease before it ends up being too obvious.
That's exactly it. I mean, and that's what is infuriating to me as an executive in the medical device world, how much blinders the medical directors of insurance companies have. Mm-hmm. You mentioned my other two companies, Mederi and ResTech. We had a technology. Your good friend and partner, Jay Yapuri, and my good friend and my champion.
And also former guest.
Yeah.
Guest. Yeah. I love that. Well, we got to talk about that if we see him tonight. He is of the same mindset that you are. And that's why I'm so excited about meeting you and being involved with you, because I can see that you're just not the average gastroenterologist. You're banking.
Are you saying I'm below average? Or?
No, you're way above average. You're not the guy that's clocking to do his 12 EGDs and then go home. Yeah, you're looking constantly for ways to improve patient care. And if the insurance companies would just understand that if AI is going to make you that much better, and you're already good, but make you that much better, which is going to translate to potentially finding things or not missing something that will lead to tremendous cancer-related care that is, guess what, going to cost the insurance company tenfold what it would cost to do a simple diagnostic test. It's infuriating, but it's what Jay and I dealt with for 10 years trying to adopt our technology Strata. It could never get insurance approval. and and it was the most minimally invasive treatment for reflux disease, which is one of the biggest conditions that you face and deal with every day. So it's just about changing mindsets. I'm hoping that AI brings that to light, and demonstrates to the insurance companies that, that this is a tool that is really going to help us save money. And to our good friend Abby's over here in the audience with her whiteboard saying, what is it doing for the patient? It's hopefully improving care.
Something else, and I know this is kind of a sidebar, but using the term AI, it's used so much now as it's kind of a hot button topic, depending upon where most people want to intercept it or they think that they will come across it. But really, in this instance, it's not like what we see in the news. This or hear about on podcasts or hear about what people want to avoid. Oftentimes, people hear AI and it's about how is this technology going to mimic humans?
Yeah, or replace.
Yeah, or develop emotion and think critically. And really what you're doing, in my opinion, is bringing a technology that's the best aspect of AI working with humans to really enhance life for patients.
Question. That's so well said, Eric. I mean, that's our mission statement. That's our story.
Yeah.
We are, and back to your question about how it was born and what was involved in the development of it. We weren't trying to let a machine figure it out. We were comparing it to the Ken Browns of the world. Mm-hmm. So there was a panel of experts in Asia that read thousands of capsules a year. And that panel was basically put to the test, or our AI was put to the test against those experts. And that was so rewarding and so incredibly positive about the outcome is the experts were good. They were 97% good at not missing something, or if it was negative, it was negative. If it was positive, it was a positive. No false negatives or false positives. I mean, so the AI in head-to-head competition in our study demonstrated that we were slightly better, or we were slightly more accurate. But once again, it still falls in the hands of the doctor to make that final call.
So in the studies that were published, there was 113 million images from over 5,000 patients per lesion analysis, per anything seen. The sensitivity and negative predictive value of this capsule I'm holding here is 99.9% and 100% respectively. So just slightly below that was the
panel of experts.
The panel of experts. This is very reassuring in the sense that, number one, it's not a situation where gastroenterologists are going to lose their job, because this is the place where this is a perfect spot to help both find subtle things in an area where you're looking for subtle reasons for a problem that isn't obvious on CT or MRI and the endoscopy and colonoscopy. And then the other thing is that as a physician, if something gets missed, and God forbid there's a lawsuit, it's, well, I reviewed it. How many have you done? I've been doing it since the first capsule was ever done. So I don't know. I don't want to date myself, but it's been a long time. And the second thing is that we employed AI technology based on this science, and this was here. So no, I believe that we did everything in our power to find the lesion. Unfortunately, it probably developed after this capsule was done. Just saying this in the sense that from a physician, first is do no harm. Second is if harm is done, are you at fault?
Right.
And here, this is just another layer of protection. It's a safety net, which is what I like about it.
That's a perfect statement, perfect saying. Please write that down, because I think we need to start using that. Safety nets are good, right? I mean, if it's like anything else. I mean, look at driving a Tesla right now. Yeah, you're gonna trust a Tesla, but at the end of the day, you still have to be the guy behind the gal behind the wheel.
Sure.
One of the beauties of our study, we're not a one and done company, and we're not a one and done study. That was a very robust study, one of the biggest I've ever read, and I do a lot of clinical research before I decide to get into anything, and I couldn't find any other AI driven study, including in in radiology or in orthopedics or any other specialty. Nobody had the breadth or the size of a study that this company had. So that encouraged me. But then they didn't stop there. They followed it up, and they did the same study in Europe, and that's getting ready to be published. It's not as large of a population.
So let's comment on that really quick, just so that everyone's aware of this. In China and Japan, actually, gastric cancer is the most common cancer, and you screen for it the way that we screen for colon cancer. So if epigenetics, genetics, and environment, one of those three,
diet, the whole 9 yards, right?
the whole 9 yards, the incidence of gastric cancer is the way that we screen for colon cancer. So we find polyps, they find early gastric lesions. And they're able to remove those early gastric lesions. And so if somebody says, well, how'd they get so many patients? It's because, my goodness, that's the best place to do it. Like,
Right.
Pretty damn lucky that the two guys that were involved were actually of Chinese descent and had the ability to go back to China to relaunch it during a recession here.
Yeah, no question.
And then happened to be in an environment where everyone needs to swallow one of these capsules.
Yeah, no question.
Or everyone needs an endoscopy, ideally, but we all know that requires manpower and everything. It's capsule, go home, come back in 8 hours, capsule, go home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's funny, Ken, because when I was doing my research to get into this opportunity, and I say this to all my new hires and my candidates that I'm interviewing, you don't find, and you've been in this business a long time, both of you have, you don't find technologies that come around that are that dramatically different, that impactful, that innovative. So when you do, you really got to kind of, resist your tendency to resist change. Right? Think outside the box. That's what I like about this guy. That's why I want to get him involved in what we're doing, because I see that in his nature and in his drive. Because that's going to be part of how we launch. We have to have people that are endorsing it, not even endorsing it, just giving us credibility, testimonial-wise. What Paul is doing. Am I supposed to read that? Hold on.
No, I think that's...
You're distracting me, Abby.
All right, so the bleacher whiteboard over there, just say for Eric, for...
You're pretty good at that, though, I got to admit.
Telling us what to do?
Yeah. That's our wives, right? No question. And I met her husband today for the first time on speakerphone, and he sounded pretty solid. And he let us borrow his truck today instead of her tiny little car. So.
Nice. We were talking yesterday when we talk about technology like this, since you and I have seen, and this happens in the medical field, and the bleeding edge pretty much sums this up. Just because you can, should you? Now, when I talk about the bleeding edge, you go ahead and explain that with the.
Have you ever seen Bleeding Edge on Netflix?
I don't think I have, no.
What they demonstrated were different devices that were used, the medical devices, that basically, because of a previous technology that basically fit a category, without full evaluation through the FDA, they were granted the ability for their use in humans. And
predicate device.
Exactly. Predicate device policy. And basically they would get to 3 or 4 generations removed from the original approval. And it led to things like cobalt being used in orthopedic implements and replacements of hips. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until they had some people who were suffering mental cognition issues, and nobody could put their finger on it until one of the very orthopedic surgeons that was implanting them had it done to him, and then suddenly he couldn't think. And then he suddenly said, wait a second, what I have is...
What's the correlation?
I'm exhibiting cobalt toxicity, and then he had it removed, and then he was fine, and then they went back and did that, and I think it was DePuy was who it was that was named in that suit. But anyway, and they went through that, and with 2 other devices, but I think where you're going is... using an old technology, do no harm. I mean, the capsule is quite safe. Mm-hmm. So let's talk about moving in that vein and getting approval for a device like this with an added technology like AI to it.
You mean like in the sense of contraindications or complications?
No. So what I'm saying is like we've talked about different companies that have developed technologies, and early on in my career, I was one of those people that jumped off every springboard and said, "That looks cool. Let me try it." Until I had, until you end up getting a couple wake up calls, and you're like, "Oh my goodness, no! This is just because you can doesn't mean you should."
Yeah.
This falls into a whole different category to me, which is just because we can, why aren't we all the time? Because it elevates a safe old device that is completely different than new technology in the sense that it's using this leveraging where I'm moving around certain FDA regulations to get something put in there. This is the exact same capsule that I have used in patients for over 10 years, except it's added this level of security. And so this is more of, now that we have it, we have to.
Yeah. So with our technology, we've tried to, not dramatically impact change as much as we could. So we replicated the given imaging platform, as I mentioned earlier. There's no patents that say you can't. So we made the learning curve for you very simple. We made the reliance on AI completely up to you. What's beautiful about our technology is you can still look at it in the way that you've been trained and how you do it today, and you get the overlay of the AI, much like you do in the GI Genius technology that you were talking about.
Yeah, I mean, we can comment on that real quick. GI Genius uses AI for colonoscopy. My experience with that is not as good because the numbers aren't as robust as what you guys are showing up with.
Correct.
And it is just it's just a series of
Lots of
green boxes popping up everywhere, and you're just like, oh. And if you're a new gastroenterologist, it's going to take you 2 hours to do a colonoscopy because you're like, what's that? And so because we were one of the sites to trial GI Genius in the DFW Metroplex, and as it turns out, the polyp detection rate amongst our doctors at our center, and we're a high volume center, I think was like nominally more, 2 or 3% more with GI Genius versus us just doing it. But the time took more time, and also it's a cost that we decided as a group that doesn't incur. What it did do for us is go, oh, that 2 to 3% was on one person. Hey, here's an idea. Why don't you just take a little more time on your way out so that you do this? And so we were equal to that, and it cost more, and it created more time. Yours, in 113 million images, 5,000 patients, slightly superior to a panel of experts, which is exactly where I want it to be. If it's better, that's perfect. So it's slightly superior, and it decreased the time. Yep. So it's the exact opposite of that. That's so exactly not bashing GI Genius, kind of bashing GI Genius because we didn't take them on, and we did a 6-month trial with them. But this is,
and it adds cost.
So their cost was significant. Yours is not an added cost, which is also fascinating, and that probably helps that the way that the business model. It's like all things. Like we end up in a room like this through a series of events. Some events seemed good, some events seemed bad, but we're here now and it's awesome. 2008 housing market made 2 guys go back to China. They end up doing it, and a little tiny bank called SoftBank decided to back them, which allowed them to take the time to build this. Yeah. And so it's all, if you look at it from 30,000 foot view, it makes sense.
Yeah, it makes total sense, and it's so invigorating and exciting. I think the future that our company has, because we're not a one-trick pony. We have this, which is taking the country by storm. Abby and I have been doing this for only a month, and she's already developing the excitement level that she's developing here with you guys in Dallas. I've only been really selling it officially since January. So we're just at the bare minimum of our commercial launch, the excitement. And we've already got 30 plus accounts that are using it on a daily basis. And there's so many other things, Ken or Dr. Brown, that are in the pipeline.
Now I want to talk about the pipeline, but one last thing. So in case somebody's listening to this and be like, well, that's kind of weird. He's seems to be endorsing it. Well, I'm kind of endorsing it because yesterday you two were kind enough to show up at my office, and I swallowed this capsule, not this one. But that would
Not that one. Yeah,
Yeah,
you didn't
it's
collect
not
that
this
one out of your.
Yeah, I did.
Yours
Yeah.
went into the sewage system here in
Yeah.
Plano, Texas.
So the Plano, Texas sewage system has a bunch of these. I swallowed this, easy to swallow, no big deal. Filmed my small bowel, my stomach and my small bowel, and read it. And I read it right before this podcast, literally sitting here just looking at it. And it took all of about 3 minutes to read but now, honestly, 3 minutes is a stretch. It basically took like a minute and a half, but I've read thousands of these. So I knew briefly I just scanned through it and said, nope, nothing there. And then I let AI do it. And then AI picked up things that it found. The only thing that's weird is I had an almond looking thing that followed me from my stomach, and I didn't eat any almonds, so I don't know what that was.
That was lodged somewhere, and it got dislodged possibly by the capsule.
I don't know. Maybe it was giving me my superpowers, and now I've removed this one magic almond that I've been carrying around my whole life.
You have enteric almonditis?
Yeah, I don't know.
That's a great medical term. You just came up with that, too.
Almonditis. So what we're talking about here, which is I love, is that you said you'd come on the podcast, and you came a day early and said, I want you to do it, and I did. Piece of cake.
We're grateful for you to do that.
And as a gastroenterologist, I read it myself and looked at it, and it was super easy. And obviously the learning curve changes a little bit, like it always does. But I've probably the maximum read time would be 7 minutes if it's the first or second one you've done. And so as gastroenterologists watching this, this is definitely a game changer here. This is not GI Genius in a capsule. This is something a little bit different.
I got a question for both of y'all. You with the technology and you being the practitioner who uses this technology, I think most people listening can kind of grasp how you know as the physician where you are when you're looking with a scope, because you know how far the scope is in and roughly the location of where that camera is at the tip of the scope to know where. When someone swallows a capsule, how does the technology kind of communicate back to you the location in the small bowel of where the things are?
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah, I'm smiling ear to ear. But, why don't you take that question first? And then
I will take my knowledge of it.
How do you do it now?
I will take my knowledge of it. So what Eric's talking about is, what good is this? So Mrs. Johnson, we know you're bleeding. We know you're bleeding about 3.5 hours into your small bowel. I kind of think it might be around here. There is a rough mapping system over here. And what I mean by that is that the original company that did this tried to have some sort of location about where it is, and it was profoundly off all the time. Because you'd see it in one section, it'd be in the right lower quadrant in a second, and all of a sudden it'd be in the upper left quadrant, and it can't do that by nature, and so it was wild. So we all just kind of laughed that off as there's no real way. And so part of the problem that we always had is we found something, we think it's 3.5 hours in, everybody's motility is completely different. Stomach emptying time could be 3 hours. I've had capsules that sat in the stomach for 8 hours, never even made it into the small bowel.
An Ozempic patient, right?
Oh, don't even get me started on this. This is the whole. There we go. We just got shadow banned again. Nice job, Ray.
Way to go, Ray.
Every time we just crawl out of that shadow ban.
I've not heard that term before, but it's probably not good, right?
Yeah. So basically what ends up happening, if somebody has an issue, they just go, I don't like that. Like somebody from Ozempic goes, they did it again. And then they file some sort of complaint. And then,
I should have used the...
and then you're just you sort of become this island of social media where nobody can see or hear you. And so they call it the shadow ban, where you're just talking to yourself. But that's okay. Eric and I like talking to each other.
We've been here a lot.
Yeah. We hang out.
You've been shadow banned a few times.
Yeah. So So the fascinating thing about is
the time location.
Time location is completely inaccurate with the current technology that we're using. I say this because I asked him that exact question.
Did you really?
yesterday. That's why he's smiling ear to ear.
Smile. Was that a setup? I love it.
No,
It was not.
We've never talked
You
about
didn't even
that.
talk about
No.
it.
Yeah, but
That's how
we've hung out a
intuitive you
lot
are.
together. We sometimes he feels the energy and runs with it.
Well, and maybe this will be a nice segue to your next question about the pipeline. And I have to, at this point, as the senior director of sales, say that there are only certain things I can talk about, because of the stage at which it's in the FDA approval process. And our compliance officer, if he was listening to this, would be listening very intently to how I phrase things. But we have a very healthy pipeline of innovation coming that's tied to the capsule. And we were very aware of that limitation. And many of your partners, including Jay, that are the interventional guys. So when Ken finds that bleeder and says, we got to get that fixed immediately, they have to go in with a special device, a double balloon enteroscopy, and find it. And finding it is not easy, as he just explained. So we've been working on some things, and we don't have FDA clearance for this particular technology that I'm referencing. We have FDA clearance for our small bowel capsule system. And in full disclosure, we are still going through our final FDA clearance on the AI component. So we can use it now in evaluation programs, which is what Ken is involved in through GI Alliance. But it's still finishing its final stages of clearance. And our magnetic capsule is cleared for both tethered use, so looking at the esophagus, so you can suspend that capsule in the esophagus and look around without a scope, and then you can release it into the stomach and steer it around magnetically for the stomach.
So I want to get into that. Sorry, I just want to get into that.
Am I getting ahead of myself?
Yeah, a little bit. I just want to get back so that the gastroenterologists that watch this, they understand that you can't say this, but I can at least speculate that you have some better version of finding an exact location of where the small bowel is, possibly using a GPS device like everything else is using.
Yes, I will go as far as saying that.
Okay, so the ability to see, read quickly, have the backup, the safety net of AI, and the ability to, at least in the future, once you get FDA
very
cleared,
near future, I will say.
Yeah, very near future, be able to say in the just past the ligament of Treitz, about a foot away, there is a bleeding AVM, arterial venous malformation. I'm going to send to Dr. Yapuri or Dr. Ackerman, my partner, both interventionalists, that'll use a double balloon enteroscopy and get there and then cauterize that. And now you no longer have any more bleeds. Is a game changer.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. I totally agree with that. And I know a lot of interventional GIs through my therapeutic world that I lived in prior to AnX, and every one of them has said the same thing. Game changer is the coined phrase, because there's a lot of time that goes into that procedure, as you know. So if you can improve the accuracy of that, let them get to where they need to get to quickly, it's a game changer.
And shout out to those. So one of the reasons why I joined my particular group is my partner, Dr. Marcus Goldschmidt, Mickey Goldschmidt, fantastic. I literally joined my group because during the interview, he just started showing me shit that he was doing that was just like, and I'm brand new. I'm interviewing to join the group, and I was just like, no, you didn't. And he goes, yes, I did. And he pulled out X-rays, and he was like, I made a fishless tract here. I did a dilation, and I did it, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm doing that.
I like
and then
this.
A couple years into it, and I was like, this is stressful. I'm getting home really late, and people are hurting, and I'm getting called a lot.
Calls in the middle of the night.
I think I'm going to really kind of focus on hemorrhoids now. That's pretty much what I did. So, love my interventional people, but God bless them. That's a hard life.
But we're making their lives easier.
Yeah.
That's what this is all about.
I got a question, and that goes back to the magnet you were talking about with the look with the capsule in the esophagus. So once a patient swallows that, are they still awake during this?
Yeah, that's the beauty of it.
So they're awake and
sedation free.
Okay, so sedation free, and being awake, we swallow. What I think is really cool is that you're describing that you could basically suspend this capsule amidst someone being awake and swallowing. And then now you can have the look of what the esophagus looks like.
Correct.
While the patient is awake.
Yep. In their normal state.
In their normal state.
Esophageal function.
On
but
the anesthesia side.
Guess what's even better, Eric? You drove yourself to the appointment, and you got up and you drove out.
Yeah.
So you're in and out in 45 minutes, and you're back to work or at home or whatever the state. You're not dependent on a loved one to take you, come out of sedation. What you have to deal with now with endoscopy. So it's just a potential game changer, if you will.
Sure.
For diagnostic purposes, because as I mentioned earlier, gastroesophageal reflux disease is one of the largest conditions that America faces. Obesity and GERD, and this is a simple, easy way to get that first look at it.
I think it's really cool because now you can not only have that, but you can have the visual of what an awake person looks like without sedation or anesthesia. And if there ever is LES compromise from someone who is having anesthesia or sedation, they're not having that while they're having this magnetic capsule.
That is an incredible observation, because a lot of times when we still have patients, what we end up doing is sending them for a video esophagram with a capsule to swallow, because we want to see what happens when they're actually awake.
Yeah.
Maybe we didn't get a good visualization because you were asleep. That's actually really cool. Yeah. And the other thing is that the most prescribed medication worldwide are these PPIs that are associated with significant side effects now. They're being linked to dementia, osteoporosis, things like that. So I have all these patients that are trying really hard to get off these medications, but what people don't realize is that esophageal cancer has risen over 700% in the last decade. And screening for this is super important. I have actually worked with a couple other companies that have tried to find a capsule for Barrett's screening with no control. You're like, I don't know if that Z line was around. I don't know if that Z line.
It flies down like a...
It just flies right through, and you're sitting there. But the ability to stop and go, okay. So one of the concerns when I'm walking around with my vest wearing this yesterday, it's like all things. I said, this is a new AI company that's doing this. Both the techs, the nurses, the CRNAs all had some concern of, is this AI that's going to replace me? I'm like, honestly, I think it's going to make us way busier.
Yeah. Because
if we can actually tell the primary care doctor, look, I know that I'm booked out 3 months. Do me a favor. If you, here's this capsule company where I want you to send the patient to this location. We're going to do a magnetic screen. We're going to see if the Z line looks irregular. Z line is where the esophagus and the stomach come together. When you have long-term reflux, your body adapts. That old adage, if you can't beat them, join them. The esophageal tissue becomes like stomach tissue, which is perfect because you don't have symptoms anymore. Problem is that in a small percentage of people, it will continue to change and can become cancer, esophageal cancer.
Right.
Yeah. And so this is an opportunity to sit there and look at that, be able to stop and go, okay, your Z line is normal. And then it doesn't stop there. This is the actual stomach exam. So now where it was studied in China to screen for the stomach cancers, you have the ability to do this. The one thing that I'm a little bit confused from your website, and I've got a little picture of it here, is it at a facility? Is it done in an endoscopy center? How is this done?
Well, that's the beauty of it. It can be done anywhere because it's an outpatient procedure. The billing code for it is actually an outpatient code. So it does not have to be in the hospital, nor does it have to be in an endoscopy suite. So as you have in your center, you have a diagnostic room that has capsule, it has Bravo or pH testing, it has manometry. The magnetic capsule technology or system can sit in that room, and that patient can just walk in off the street, have a test done. And I'll expand on what you see as the clinical value, because I totally agree with you. That's where I think the lion's share of where we could go with this is going to come from. But it also is a great post-therapeutic or post-medical therapy technology or diagnostic test to do. If you do put those patients on PPIs for 4 months, and say come back in 4 months, you can quickly drop a capsule on a tether and say, "Yep, your esophagus is healed. This is working."
And when you
Stay
say on a tether, what does that mean?
Well, it's a little thin tube. It's a rubberish type tube, silicone tube, that on one end is a suction cup, much like, for lack of a better description, a rubber, and it goes on the back end of that capsule that you were holding in your hand, and then on the other end there's a port for air, for a syringe, and you will have the patient swallow the capsule with the tether. The tether will unravel as it's swallowing, and then it'll suspend because you can hold it in one place. So the operator or the doctor or the tech would be outside of the patient's mouth holding the tether, and the camera is live.
A little closer.
Sorry, the camera is live. So you're watching, to Eric's point, you're watching live video of the lower esophageal what? Lower esophageal what? Abby? So Dr. Brown described
we have our podcast director Abby in the bleachers there scolding you.
Who's still being?
You work for him, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell him to get closer. I don't think him.
She's still actually in training. So we had this while we were waiting for you the other day. I was quizzing them on anatomy and the GE junction that you just described. I said, what is the other word for it, Abby?
I guess the reson why I said tether is that we were talking magnet controlling it.
Well, it's a combination. So, so the beauty of the tether is, and you explained that the downside of the existing capsule for the esophagus, it falls through at a rapid pace. You swallow. Most patients are sitting up. So when they swallow it, it just shoots right down and goes through. Mm-hmm. In your video, we barely saw your esophagus. We saw the LES for about a second.
Yeah.
Then it was in the stomach. So with the tether, it enables you to suspend it.
Just to pause right there for a second. So I'm actually very interested in the natural space, and I'm trying to always think of different things, and I'm trying to develop something for GERD. I scoped myself. I was going to show you a video of that.
Without sedation?
Without sedation. It's a pretty funny video.
Boy,
because the tech forgot to put on the air, and I had a bite block in, and I was screaming, ah, ah. They're like, what's he saying? The other tech was like, I don't think you set the machine up right. Anyways, point being, it went right through. Well, as it turns out, I have a 3-centimeter hiatal hernia that I saw in myself. Like, I had pathology that was completely missed when it just gets swallowed. So
no question, yeah. So the tether allows you to have a extended view, period of time. Doesn't have to be long, but the goal.
Can you do that with a magnet also?
You can. So there's the magnetic control is not as robust in the esophagus, because the esophagus is a organ that basically collapses on itself.
Yeah.
Where you can see some advantage with the magnet, and we've tested that at at University of Massachusetts up in Boston. You would have the patient, much like you do a manometry study where you stick a pressure sensor down through the nose, then you have them do a series of swallows. You can do the same with this design, and the esophagus will expand, and then if they're under the magnet, you can move the magnet around while the esophagus is opening and closing. But it's really just designed to give you a quick look at the LES, at that GE junction. Is there any redness? Is there any Barrett's esophagus present that's visible? We can't take a biopsy, so that's the limitation.
That's why I think it'll generate a ton of business for gastroenterology.
Yeah.
I think one of the things that could be really cool about this is something called eosinophilic esophagitis, which is a food allergy. And when we're looking at this, one of the treatments that you can do is just take food away and then repeat the endoscopy and see what's going on. But what you're talking about is the ability to look at it and see. And that is one of those things that we see in young kids also, in all ages. So
yeah, no, it's an incredible advancement that I think we're bringing to the table for the first time, because capsule endoscopy, the limitation has always been, it travels on its own, and it travels quickly, especially through the esophagus. So with the advancement of and the FDA approval of our tethered capsule, you're able to suspend the capsule in the distal esophagus and look around. You have some magnetic control of it if you have the magnetic system, the Navicam MCCE unit, and then you get a bird's eye view of the esophagus without needing a scope. And that's the true advantage of it.
Well, the beauty is, like, if you have a child that has EOE, eosinophilic esophagitis, and you're trying to determine what food causes it, then you take a food away, like a nut or gluten or soy or shellfish or whatever. You take one of those away, and instead of bringing them back in and put them through an invasive procedure, you just say, okay, we're going to go, you're going to swallow that thing. The doctor's going to do this, look, and be like, oh, look, we're seeing improvement now.
Exactly right.
It looks like this is the food. This is exciting.
Yeah. It is, everything that I've ever strived to do in my career from a med device standpoint is minimally invasive. And this is probably the most accurate form of that in terms of visualization that has come around in 20-some years.
Well, and as an anesthesia provider, not every single person needs to go under anesthesia. If we can find a reason to help avoid that, especially a young kid, that's what I think.
Yeah.
That's how I think most of us would view that.
Yeah, and we talked yesterday about, the whole thing is that you just, when your kid's sick, you're sick, period.
Yep.
That's all it is.
Yep.
So,
No parent wants their child to be anesthetized. I mean, that's the biggest fear they have, and we're providing a solution for that.
Correct.
But you hit on a great point that I'd like to expand on, because it's not just children. It's morbidly obese. You as an advanced endoscopist, what's your biggest fear? Putting a 350-pound person that has a very short neck or a wingspan, airway, and you're scoping them.
I will correct you really quick. I don't give a shit about any of that. He does.
I care a lot about
You care a lot about it. Exactly. You're at the highest risk.
Yeah.
And the most stress during a procedure.
He's the one that looks at me and be like, hey, next time, this guy's being done at the hospital, all right?
Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, and nobody wants to have to cancel a case, but sometimes in an outpatient ambulatory surgery center, it's just simply not safe. If the BMI is too big, it's wild.
Didn't even think of that as a possibility. Somebody comes in and they are considered that they cannot go under anesthesia. And so, okay, look, here's the deal. This person has a defibrillator. This person's on dialysis. This person is morbidly obese. This person has a BMI of 52. We're not going to cancel the case. We are going to use our magnetic capsule on this one. You'll be able to do this unsedated, and it's not a waste of his or your time, his or her, your time.
No question.
Ooh, interesting.
And you can
Interesting
also
angle.
throw patients that are on blood thinners, because
another angle.
The biggest risk obviously is creating a bleed that you can't stop. So this helps avoid that, and it's really our mission to get this technology in your hands so that you have that alternative. Let's face it, change or what's the best phrase to describe it? Just the standard of care.
Yeah.
Has always been scope, and that makes total sense, and it's been the best thing available. But now you have something else, and
Something occurred to me thinking about the use of the magnets and the positioning of it. Do you currently right now with the pill cameras that you use, you're not getting any kind of visualization or sampling around the common bile duct?
No, not at all.
Is that something that you can do, is maybe visualize that area, or is that?
You can, absolutely. So the capsule itself will travel. So we're looking at it in three spaces. We're looking at, for the first time ever, being able to visualize the esophagus without, sedation or without a scope, visualizing the stomach, but then it's going to pass through the pylorus at some point and go into the duodenum. Mm-hmm. And there is some area there. The duodenum has, some bulb-ish characteristics that give it some space, because you need volume. We talked about earlier insufflation of the stomach. You can't really insufflate the duodenum, but there is enough room in there and enough magnetic control that you could spin the capsule around and take a look.
Cool.
You can't get you can't get to the level of an ERC P and the scopes that are adjustable and you can literally turn corners. You don't have that type of control with a magnet, but you can get a very rudimentary view of the ducts and the bile ducts, and then one thing that we are developing, and I can't speak about commercially is the ability to sample the fluids that are in that region, and hopefully at some point help better detect pancreatic cancer.
Okay, so you just said it, pancreatic cancer. Talk about how much of an advantage it would be for you as the clinician to be able to sample right there where you typically can't.
Oh, we're getting to the point where we can actually sample fluid, run DNA analysis, and see if there's something atypical. Like, this is an exciting time where this is going on. The problem with something like pancreatic cancer is that many times the imaging that we use can't pick it up until it's too late. So finding it early. So I send a lot of my patients that have a family history of pancreatic cancer, because there's no real guidelines on this, but it's like, listen, if I'm you, if my dad died of pancreatic cancer and my dad died at 50 and I'm 35, 40, what's the best test I can get? I'm going to send you for an endoscopic ultrasound. But if we can sit there and say, okay, listen, we're going to screen you annually with a capsule that will sample and determine if there's any atypical cells, that's a game changer.
Yeah.
Huge game changer.
Yep.
Wild.
Yeah. That's our pipeline.
Should we talk about his
Yeah.
really awesome other
So
company?
I just want to shift gears real quick because, you have this interesting thing that you are the founder of On Point Golf, but there's a little bit of a story behind it, and we're going to do a whole podcast on it. So briefly,
give you the 10,000-foot view.
Explain what that is.
So, as you and I have discussed in our initial meetings here this week, I'm an avid golfer. So I'm always looking as a golfer for tools that will make me better. And one of the limitations in the game of golf is the visualization of your putting line on the green when you're waiting your turn to putt. And everybody in the game of golf marks their ball with a coin. A coin is a two-dimensional object.
Mm-hmm.
So, long story short, a group of friends and I, sitting around after several bourbons, said, why don't we develop a three-dimensional marker that, will adhere to the rules of golf so that it's not a tool that is considered, illegal or an advantage, and give the putter a better view of their line. The funniest part about golf is you sit around waiting. You have three other playing partners, and you hit a shot, and you're waiting to make your shot. Most of the time, you're just sitting there looking around, at the scenery or waiting and watching what the other players are doing. This tool gives you better engagement of your putting line because now you can walk around to the other side of the putt, and you can see from 20 feet away a ball marker that, I don't know if the cameras are picking this up, but the ball marker is designed like a golf ball. It's just a top third of the golf ball. So we make them in white, we make them in chrome, we make them in bright orange, yellow. So it's just a better visualization tool. And three-dimensional, we talked about earlier, your eyes are 3D. You close your eye, you're 2D, but as soon as you open the second eye, now you have depth perception.
Mm-hmm.
This gives you a better view, depth perception-wise, gives you a better view of the slope. It forces you, as Jim Furyk, a good friend of mine and and what we call our brand ambassador, said to me, he goes, Ray, this helps me engage better in my putting routine than I ever did before.
What's fascinating is if we had Andrew Huberman on here, he could explain as a neuro-optic scientist exactly why you can see the line better when your eyes focus on a three-dimensional object. It can then follow the three-dimensional turn.
Exactly.
I think it's a simple concept that is fascinating. I want to, when you come back in town, and when you come back in to do the podcast, I'm going to introduce you to my good friend Josh Myers, who owns a company called Fantastic Turf, and they do artificial turf all over Dallas. And a lot of the homes he puts in these putting greens.
Yeah.
And these putting greens, they can use your product to practice the visualization and realize probably how your brain will just naturally see that.
Exactly.
And follow it.
Yep, that's the concept. It's high tech, to be honest with you. To your point, the inventor of Callaway's triple track was an
something,
Yeah.
ophthalmologist,
Ophthalmologist.
Yes,
optometrist,
he was totally an ophtомologist.
optic
He was.
scientist.
Yeah, and
he had eyes.
He had a lot of brains, and he did a clinical study on 3-dimensional view and the use of the 3 lines, just because it's more than one thing that you're looking at.
I love it.
Yeah.
I think it's so simple and it's so complex. And like I said, if you're a neuroscientist and you can sit there and explain this, but
If you're a golfer, this will definitely be in the show notes.
yeah, and we're gonna do a whole one on golfing. We'll have Jim Furyk on the show. You promise?
I will invite him. I
All
promise. He loves coming to Dallas.
And
so.
I'm gonna need a couple of those to give to my buddy Josh so that he can give it to his Highland Park clients.
No question.
That,
I'll bring a handful of samples for everybody.
Yes, I love it.
And
I
we'll all
love
go
it.
play around the golf, and you'll see that your strokes are going to be reduced considerably.
Oh, I love it. I'm what's my handicap now? 42.
Golf is your handicap.
Yeah, golf is my handicap. Yeah.
We'll get you into single digits,
That's
I
horrible,
promise.
but quite funny. That was good.
Well, I can't thank you enough, Ray, for making time to come and share. I mean, seriously, share some of the coolest cutting edge technology that's rolling out. I think it's going to be a game changer for the benefit of all GI patients. I think this is a really, really cool direction, and I'm glad that you came to share with us. It's really awesome.
Thank you.
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, everyone. If you have any questions about this, if you're concerned about whether you need a capsule endoscopy, as always, hit us up on the Gut Check Project, and we will continue to discuss this. This is what we're trying to do, bring cool, innovative stuff on. A great guy like Ray that has devoted his life to this and golf, which is cool.
Definitely. So be sure to like and share. Thank you so much for joining us on the Gut Check Project. We will see y'all next time.
Take it easy.